An 84-year-old homeless veteran pushed his shopping cart into Judge Capriora's courtroom on a simple trespassing charge. But when he revealed what was hidden inside that cart, the judge's reaction shocked everyone and proved that some debts can never truly be repaid. Welcome back to Judge Stories, where real people meet real justice in the most unexpected ways. Before we dive into this incredible story about honor, sacrifice, and the power of recognition, tell me in the comments, have you ever had someone recognize your service in a way that changed everything? Hit that subscribe button, because stories like Arthur Milton's deserve to be remembered forever. Providence Municipal Court operates with clockwork precision every weekday morning. Judge Frank Caprio, now approaching his mid-80s, has presided over this courtroom for more than 3 decades. He has seen every type of case, heard every excuse, and witnessed both the best and worst of human nature. But that Tuesday morning in November, something walked through his courtroom doors that would test everything he believed about justice and compassion. The morning docket was typical for a Tuesday: parking violations, minor traffic infractions, small disputes, and the usual parade of Providence residents trying to navigate their way through the legal system. Judge Caprio moved through cases with his characteristic blend of wisdom, humor, and genuine care for the people who appeared before him. Then came case number 23. The courtroom door creaked open, and in walked a figure who immediately caught everyone's attention. Arthur Milton, 84 years old, pushed a rusted shopping cart loaded with what appeared to be his entire life's possessions. Layers of worn clothing hung loose on his thin frame. His gray beard was unkempt, his hands weathered and shaking slightly as he gripped the cart's handle. But something about the way he carried himself strayed back despite his age. Eyes clear and alert suggested this wasn't just another homeless case. "State your name for the record," Judge Caprio said, his voice gentler than usual as he sensed something different about this defendant. "Arthur William Milton, Your Honor, United States Marine Corps, retired." His voice carried a strength that belied his frail appearance. Judge Caprio's pen stopped moving. The words Marine Corps seemed to hang in the air like an echo from another lifetime. "Mr. Milton, what brings you before the court today?" The prosecutor stood up. "Your Honor, Mr. Milton was arrested for trespassing at the Veterans Memorial Park. Security found him sleeping on a bench near the monument." Judge Caprio looked at Arthur, then at the shopping cart, then back at Arthur. Something in the old man's eyes sparked a recognition that went deeper than the simple facts of the case. "Mr. Milton, before we discuss this charge, I need to ask you something," the judge said. "What branch of service and when did you serve?" Arthur straightened even more, if that was possible. "1st Battalion, 3rd Marines, Your Honor. I served 3 tours in Vietnam between 1966 and 1971. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Caprio set his pen down entirely and leaned forward. "3 tours, Mr. Milton." "Yes, sir." "First tour was 66 to 67 in Quang Tri Province. Second tour, 68 to 69, same area. Third tour was 72-71 in the Khe Sanh region." Judge Caprio's expression changed completely. This wasn't just a homeless veteran. This was a man who had volunteered to return to one of the most dangerous conflicts in American history, not once, not twice, but 3 times. "Mr. Milton," the judge said, "I have to ask, and forgive me if this seems personal, but what led you to your current circumstances?" Arthur shifted slightly, his grip tightening on the shopping cart. "Your Honor, after I came back from my 3rd tour, things were difficult. The country wasn't exactly welcoming to Vietnam veterans in those days. I struggled with what they now call PTSD, though we didn't have a name for it then. But you know what, Your Honor? I never regretted my service. Never. Because I served with the finest men who ever walked this earth, and some of them never made it home." Judge Capriora remained quiet for a long moment, processing the weight of what he had heard. Here was a man who had given the best years of his life to his country, who had volunteered to return to combat multiple times, and who was now sleeping on park benches. "Mr. Milton," the judge said softly, "tell me about that shopping cart." Arthur's eyes flickered with something pride, perhaps, or a protective instinct. "Your Honor, this cart contains everything I own. But more importantly, it contains something I've been carrying for over 50 years. The courtroom was completely silent now. Even the court reporter had stopped typing. "What's that, Mr. Milton?" Arthur reached into the cart and carefully pulled out a worn manila folder wrapped in several plastic bags to protect it from the weather. "Your Honor, this contains the letters, photographs, and personal effects of 17 Marines who didn't make it home from Vietnam. Their families, some of them, never got closure, never got their sons' final thoughts or their personal items." Judge Capriora felt his breath catch in his throat. This homeless veteran, this man society had seemingly forgotten, was carrying out one of the most honorable missions imaginable. Arthur's voice grew stronger as he spoke. "I've been trying to find these families for decades. Before the internet, it was almost impossible. I went to libraries, wrote letters to the Veterans Administration, contacted anyone who might help. I found 3 families and was able to deliver their sons' effects personally. But I still have 14 sets of items, Your Honor. 14 families who might still be wondering what their boys' final days were like." Judge Capriora struggled to maintain his composure. This homeless veteran, this man society had apparently forgotten, was performing one of the most honorable acts imaginable. Judge Capriora made a decision that would change everything. "Mr. Milton, I'm going to do something I've never done in 30 years on this bench. I'm going to recess this court for 1 hour." The prosecutor looked confused. "Bailiff, I want you to contact Channel 12 News immediately. Tell them Judge Capriora has a story that needs to be told right now." Turning back to Arthur, the judge said, "Mr. Milton, with your permission, I think it's time the world knew about your mission." Arthur looked uncertain. "Your Honor, I don't need publicity. I just need help finding these families." "Mr. Milton," Judge Capriora replied, "that's exactly what we're going to get you." 1 hour later, the courtroom had transformed. Local news crews were setting up cameras. Word spread quickly through social media, and the gallery filled with veterans, active-duty military personnel, and community members who had heard Arthur's story. Judge Capriora called the court back to order. But this was no longer a normal proceeding. "Ladies and gentlemen, today this courtroom will serve a different kind of justice. Mr. Milton, would you please tell everyone what you told me?" Arthur, still holding his shopping cart, stood before the cameras and repeated his story. He spoke about his brothers who didn't come home, about carrying their memories for 50 years, and about sleeping on park benches while protecting their final letters. There wasn't a dry eye in the courtroom. The most powerful moment came when Arthur opened the manila folder. "This is Private First Class Tommy Rodriguez from San Antonio. He was 19 when he died in my arms during the Tet Offensive. His last words were, 'Tell my mama I love her.'" Arthur held up a faded photograph of a young Hispanic Marine smiling beside a beautiful young woman. "I still have his final letter to his girlfriend and the ring he was planning to give her when he got home." Judge Capriora's eyes filled with tears. "Mr. Milton, regarding your trespassing charge case, dismissed. But more than that, I want to make you an offer." The judge stood up from his bench, something he rarely did during proceedings. "Mr. Milton, this court has connections throughout the state and throughout the country. We're going to help you complete your mission. Every television station, every newspaper, Every social media platform is going to share these men's names and stories until we find their families. The courtroom erupted in applause, but Judge Caprio wasn't finished. Furthermore, Mr. Milton, the Providence Veterans Affairs Office, has been contacted. You're never sleeping on another park bench. We're going to get you housing, medical care, and all the support you should have received 50 years ago. Arthur Milton, the tough old Marine who had carried the weight of 17 fallen brothers for half a century, finally broke down and cried. But the story didn't end there. Within 48 hours of the court proceeding being broadcast, the response was overwhelming. The court received more than 300 calls from people wanting to help Arthur. Military genealogy experts volunteered their services. Veteran organizations offered support. Then the real miracles began. The first call came from San Antonio. "I think that's my Uncle Tommy. My grandmother never stopped talking about the son who never came home from Vietnam." The second call came from Ohio. "That's my father. We always wondered what happened to his final letters." One by one, families came forward. Not just families, but surviving members of Arthur's unit who had been searching for him for decades. The most emotional moment came when Judge Caprio received a call from the daughter of Private First Class Tommy Rodriguez. "Judge Caprio, my name is Maria Rodriguez Thompson. That Marine Arthur Milton, he's been looking for us for 50 years. My mother died 10 years ago, still wondering about her Tommy. But I'm here. We're here, and we want to meet the man who carried our Tommy home." 2 weeks later, Judge Caprio held a special ceremony in his courtroom. 14 families had been located. 14 sets of final letters, photographs, and personal effects were finally going home. Arthur Milton, now clean-shaven and wearing a new suit provided by a local veterans organization, stood before the families of his fallen brothers. One by one, he handed over the sacred items he had protected for 50 years. The ceremony was broadcast live, and millions watched as these families finally received the closure they had waited half a century to find. But perhaps the most powerful moment came when Maria Rodriguez Thompson approached Arthur. "Mr. Milton, my mother always said that when Tommy left for Vietnam, he promised he'd find a way to say goodbye. It took 50 years, but he kept his promise through you." She handed Arthur a photograph. "This is my mother on her wedding day. She married my father 3 years after Tommy died. But she never forgot her first love. She always said she hoped someone would tell her what Tommy's final days were like." Arthur looked at the photograph, then at Maria, then back at the photograph. "Ma'am, your Tommy was the bravest man I ever knew." And his last words weren't just, "Tell my mama I love her." He also said, "Tell her I'll wait for her, wherever that might be." Maria broke down completely. "He's waiting for her now." Mr. Milton, they're together now, watching this moment unfold. Judge Caprio realized that sometimes justice isn't about punishment or legal precedent. Sometimes justice is about giving people the opportunity to complete the most important missions of their lives. Arthur Milton's story became a catalyst for change. The Providence Veterans Affairs Office established a new program specifically designed to help homeless veterans. The Arthur Milton Initiative provided not just housing and medical care, but also support for veterans carrying out their own missions of honor and remembrance. Judge Caprio began ending each court session with a simple reminder: everyone who walks through these doors has a story. Our job isn't just to enforce the law. It's to recognize the humanity in every person who appears before us. But the ripple effects of Arthur's story were just beginning. Within weeks, similar programs began appearing in courtrooms across Rhode Island. Judge Rebecca Santos in Newport started implementing dignity checks, asking every defendant about their background before proceeding with cases. Judge Michael Torres in Warwick began partnering with local veterans organizations to provide immediate support services right in the courtroom. The American Bar Association took notice. They invited Judge Caprio to speak at their national conference about compassionate justice in action. His presentation, "The Shopping Cart That Changed Everything," became the most watched judicial presentation in the association's history. Meanwhile, Arthur Milton became an unexpected advocate for systemic change. He testified before the Rhode Island State Legislature about failures in veteran support systems. His testimony was simple but devastating. "Senators, I carried my brother's memories for 50 years because the system that was supposed to help me failed. How many other Arthurs are out there right now carrying burdens they shouldn't have to carry alone?" The legislature passed the Dignity in Service Act, unanimously the first bill in Rhode Island history to receive 100% bipartisan support. The act mandated immediate housing assistance for any veteran appearing in court, regardless of the charges they faced. But perhaps the most powerful change happened in Arthur's daily life. He did return to Judge Caprio's courtroom, but his role had evolved far beyond anyone's expectations. 6 months later, Arthur Milton returned not as a defendant, but as a volunteer. He partnered with the Veterans Administration to help other homeless veterans navigate the system and find the support they needed. But he still carried that shopping cart. "Mr. Milton," as Caprio asked, "you have a home now, support services, everything you need. Why do you still carry the cart?" Arthur smiled a real smile this time, not the cautious expression of a man who had learned not to trust the world. "Your Honor, this cart isn't just about carrying my possessions anymore. It's about carrying the mission forward. There are thousands of veterans out there who need someone to help them carry their burdens. If an old homeless Marine with a shopping cart can find 14 families and change the system, imagine what we can do together." The cart had indeed become something entirely different. Where Arthur once carried his life's possessions and the sacred memories of fallen Marines, he now carried resource guides for homeless veterans, emergency contact cards for crisis intervention, protein bars and water bottles for immediate needs, and most importantly, a thick binder filled with success stories of veterans who had turned their lives around. Every morning, Arthur positioned his cart outside the courthouse entrance. Veterans arriving for court appearances saw him there, this well-dressed, elderly man with kind eyes and a shopping cart that somehow didn't seem out of place. He became their first stop, their translator, their advocate. "Son," he would say to nervous young veterans facing their first court appearance, "let me tell you something Judge Caprio told me. Your worst day doesn't define your whole story. Let's make sure the judge hears your real story." Judge Caprio watched this transformation with amazement. Arthur had turned his shopping cart from a symbol of homelessness into a mobile support center for veterans in crisis. "Mr. Milton," the judge said, "this court officially recognizes you as a friend of the court. Your mission is now our mission." But Arthur had an even bigger request. "Your Honor, I want to propose something. What if we created a national network? What if every courthouse in America had someone like me, a veterans, navigate the system?" Judge Caprio leaned back in his chair, considering the implications. "You're talking about a fundamental change in how the justice system interacts with veterans." "Yes, sir," Arthur replied. "I'm talking about making sure no veteran ever feels as alone as I felt for 50 years. The proposal became reality faster than anyone expected. The Arthur Milton Veteran Court Advocate Program launched in Rhode Island as a pilot initiative. Within 6 months, it had spread to Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Maine. The program was simple but revolutionary. Trained veteran advocates were stationed at courthouses to provide immediate support, resources, and guidance to any veteran facing legal proceedings. These advocates did not provide legal advice, but they ensured that every veteran understood their rights, had access to appropriate services, and most importantly, felt supported by someone who understood their experience. There are thousands of veterans out there who need someone to help them carry their burdens. If an old homeless Marine with a shopping cart can find 14 families and change the system, imagine what we can do together. The cart had indeed become something entirely different. Where Arthur once carried his life's possessions and the sacred memories of fallen Marines, he now carried resource guides for homeless veterans, emergency contact cards for crisis intervention, protein bars and water bottles for immediate needs, and most importantly, a thick binder filled with success stories of veterans who had turned their lives around. Every morning, Arthur positioned his cart outside the courthouse entrance. Veterans arriving for court appearances saw him there, this well-dressed, elderly man with kind eyes and a shopping cart that somehow didn't seem out of place. He became their first stop, their translator, their advocate. "Son," he would say to nervous young veterans facing their first court appearance, "let me tell you something Judge Caprio told me. Your worst day doesn't define your whole story. Let's make sure the judge hears your real story." Judge Caprio watched this transformation with amazement. Arthur had turned his shopping cart from a symbol of homelessness into a mobile support center for veterans in crisis. "Mr. Milton," the judge said, "this court officially recognizes you as a friend of the court. Your mission is now our mission." But Arthur had an even bigger request. "Your Honor, I want to propose something. What if we created a national network? What if every courthouse in America had someone like me, a veterans, navigate the system?" Judge Caprio leaned back in his chair, considering the implications. "You're talking about a fundamental change in how the justice system interacts with veterans." "Yes, sir," Arthur replied. "I'm talking about making sure no veteran ever feels as alone as I felt for 50 years. The proposal became reality faster than anyone expected. The Arthur Milton Veteran Court Advocate Program launched in Rhode Island as a pilot initiative. Within 6 months, it had spread to Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Maine. The program was simple but revolutionary. Trained veteran advocates were stationed at courthouses to provide immediate support, resources, and guidance to any veteran facing legal proceedings. These advocates did not provide legal advice, but they ensured that every veteran understood their rights, had access to appropriate services, and, most importantly, felt supported by someone who understood their experience. Arthur became the program's first director, a role he never could have imagined when he was sleeping on park benches. His shopping cart became the program's unofficial symbol, reminder that help can come from the most unexpected places. The families Arthur had reunited with their loved ones' final messages remained deeply involved. Maria Rodriguez Thompson didn't just establish the Tommy Rodriguez Memorial Fund. She became the program's primary fundraiser, traveling across the country to share her story and raise money for veteran advocates. Her speech at the National Veterans Convention was particularly powerful. "My Uncle Tommy died in Vietnam 50 years ago, but he came home through Arthur Milton's shopping cart. Now, through Arthur's program, we're making sure no veteran has to carry their burdens alone for 50 years. Other families followed suit. The daughter of Private Johnson from Ohio established a scholarship fund for veterans pursuing education. The son of Sergeant Williams from Texas started a job placement program specifically for older veterans who had been overlooked by traditional employment services. But the most remarkable development was how Arthur's story began changing the culture of courtrooms nationwide. Judges started asking different questions. "What's your story?" became as common as "How do you plead?" Judge Patricia Chen in California began implementing story circles, monthly sessions where community members could share their experiences with the justice system and suggest improvements. Judge Robert Davis in Texas started a mentorship program pairing judges with veterans to better understand military Culture and Trauma. The National Center for State Courts commissioned a study on the Arthur Milton effect, measuring how compassionate justice practices were improving outcomes for defendants, reducing recidivism, and strengthening community trust in the legal system. The results were startling. Courtrooms implementing Arthur-inspired programs saw a 40% reduction in repeat offenses among veterans, a 60% increase in successful completion of court-ordered programs, and an 80% improvement in community satisfaction with the justice system. The final chapter of Arthur's story is still being written. The families he reunited with their loved ones' final messages have stayed in touch. Many have become advocates for veteran affairs, and some have established scholarships in their fallen family members' names. But Arthur's influence reached far. Beyond veteran affairs, his shopping cart became a symbol of hidden dignity. Reminder that society's most overlooked individuals often carry the most important missions. Schools began teaching Arthur's story as part of their civics curriculum. Children learned that heroism doesn't always look the way they expect. Sometimes it looks like an elderly man with a shopping cart, carrying memories and hope in equal measure. Corporate America took notice. 2 major companies began implementing dignity hiring practices, actively recruiting individuals whose life experiences, including homelessness and military service, were viewed as assets rather than obstacles. The shopping cart manufacturer that had unknowingly provided Arthur's mobile home for so many years. Cascade Cart Solutions established an annual Dignity in Motion Award, recognizing individuals who use simple tools to make extraordinary differences in their communities. But perhaps the most important legacy is the change in how Judge Caprio's courtroom operates. Every person who appears before the bench is now asked not only about their case, but about their story. Veterans receive automatic referrals to support services. Homeless individuals are connected with housing resources. The courtroom has become more than a place where justice is administered. It has become a place where human dignity is recognized and restored. Judge Caprio often reflects on that. Tuesday morning, when Arthur Milton pushed his shopping cart through the courtroom doors, Arthur taught us that sometimes the most important cases aren't about guilt or innocence, the judge says. They're about giving people the opportunity to complete their missions with honor. And sometimes, he adds, the person who appears to need help the most is actually the person who has the most to teach us about service, sacrifice, and what it really means to carry your brother home. Arthur, now 85, still comes to the courthouse every day. His shopping cart is polished now, equipped with a small sound system for playing patriotic music during memorial services, a portable printer for resource documents, and a coffee maker for early morning conversations with veterans who need someone to listen. He has trained 47 other veteran advocates across 6 states. Each carries their own version of Arthur's mission, helping fellow veterans navigate not just the legal system, but the complex journey back to dignity and purpose. The original 14 families, whose loved ones' memories Arthur carried for 50 years, have become an extended family. They gather annually at Providence Veterans Memorial Park, the same park where Arthur was once arrested for trespassing. The park now features a special bench dedicated to unknown missions, a place where anyone carrying hidden burdens can sit and find peace. Last month, Arthur received a letter that brought him to tears. It was from a young Marine stationed in Afghanistan. Mr. Milton, my grandfather told me your story. I want you to know that Marines today still believe in carrying each other home. Your mission inspired my unit to create a memory protocol. We make sure every fallen brother's personal effects and final thoughts reach their families immediately. You've changed how we honor our dead, sir. Semper Fi. Caprio keeps that letter framed in his chambers. next to a photograph of Arthur's original shopping cart and a list of all the veterans who have been helped through the Arthur Milton program. The judge recently announced his retirement after 35 years on the bench. At his farewell ceremony, he made one final request. When you remember my time as a judge, don't remember the cases I decided or the sentences I imposed. Remember Arthur Milton and his shopping cart. Remember that justice isn't just about applying the law. It's about recognizing the sacred missions that people carry, often invisible to the rest of us. Arthur spoke at the ceremony as well. His words were simple but profound. Judge Caprio taught me that a courtroom can be a place of healing, not just judgment. He showed me that dignity isn't something you can lose. It's something that can always be restored when someone takes the time to really see you. The ceremony ended with something unprecedented in courthouse history. Arthur's shopping cart was placed in the courthouse lobby as a permanent memorial not to homelessness or hardship, but to the hidden heroes who walk among us carrying missions of love, honor, and service that the world desperately needs to recognize. If Arthur Milton's story has touched your heart, if you believe in honoring our veterans and recognizing the hidden heroes among us, please share this video. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that true service doesn't end when the uniform comes off. Like this video if you believe every veteran deserves our respect and support, regardless of their circumstances. And subscribe for more stories that prove that in a world that can often feel cold and indifferent, the warmth of human compassion and the power of recognizing each other's dignity will always light the way home. Remember Judge Caprio's lesson? Everyone has a story worth hearing. Everyone has a mission worth completing. And everyone deserves the chance to carry their brothers home with honor. Rest in peace to all the fallen heroes whose memories Arthur Milton carried for 50 years. Your stories have finally found their way home.